Hello and welcome to another video from me, the History. Now in this video we're going to be looking at Hitler's control of Germany in the years 1933 and beyond, and how he used terror and propaganda to control the people. So as ever, use this video to revise your key knowledge. Watch it through a few times just to get your knowledge solidified and memorised, and then turn to my tutoring videos to practice some of your questions. Some of those videos are free on YouTube, others you can get via my revision guides. Do have a look at the comments to find out more about that. Now, over to the key knowledge. Okay, let's start our talk through by looking at terror and fear, how Germany was intimidated by Nazis to be controlled. So our key leader here is Heinrich Himmler, who led the terror system, the SS police state, as you might also hear it called. So what were the key aspects of this? So firstly, there's the SS. This was Hitler's black shirts, the short Gestapo. They were supposedly perfect Aryans, fiercely loyal, fiercely strong. By 1939, there were 240,000 members. They would arrest people, detain without trial, and they ran the concentration camps. People hugely feared the SS. And where could you go if the SS rounded you up from your house? Well, you'd be sent to a concentration camp. Concentration camps are not death camps, although obviously they are not nice places to be. The camps were set up as early as March 1933 for political opponents. Dachau was set up as early as March 1933. Opponents and undesirables were sent to these camps for re-education. By 1939 and beyond, obviously, they became slave labour camps, and then eventually for the undesirables and Jews, they became death camps. But initially, they were very much about punishment and then sending people back into society, supposedly re-educated and not to be opponents of the Nazis. The next part of the terror system of the SS police state is the Gestapo, the secret police. And they would have officials monitoring all areas and suspects. They could inspect things like your mail, they could go and look through your home, they could spy on you, they could arrest without permission. So they had huge amounts of powers. But the main thing about the secret police is that obviously people knew the secret police existed. They just didn't know who was the secret police. So the fact there was a secret police created fear and suspicion in Germany. But the key weapon of the Gestapo was the informer. So informers are really important because there were local peoples who'd write into Gestapo or the police with complaints about their local neighbours, what they've seen them do, and therefore files could be built up about people, and the Gestapo could start to suspect people, monitor them, and then send them to camps. However, sometimes what happened here was informers just literally complained about their neighbours, not putting up flags, not saluting. Maybe they were slightly suspicious in some way. So there could be huge files of rather suspicious behaviour. Next, we've got the police and the courts. These were heavily controlled by the Nazis. Judges who were not loyal were sacked and replaced. The police were under the control of the SS normally. And this led to lots of law changes. So crimes punishable with death rose from 3 in 1933 to 46 by 1943. Of course, many of those were about war and about being traitors. So listening to a foreign radio station you would be deemed as a traitor and be punishable by death. But this point here is really that the normal legal system is now being used to control people. The second large point of control is propaganda. Now, the typical thing to consider here is that the bullet point question 6 in your exam, could be, which was the most important in controlling Germany? Was it the SS police state, or was it censorship, or was it propaganda? We've got to make sure we're aware of examples of these different things. So in this, I'll try and make it clear what propaganda and censorship is as well, so you're aware of the difference. Of course, the key part we're looking at here now is propaganda, led by Joseph Goebbels. This was the information that people received from the propaganda ministry and how it tried to control people's beliefs and ideas. So newspapers was one of the main forms of media in this time. Now, there's a big problem here because in 1933 there were 4,700 newspapers to control. So Goebbels had to bring in lots of solutions. So he took over lots of publishers, publishing houses, and also set up the Nazi news agency. This meant basically by the end of the 1930s there was only really one publishing house, the Nazi news agency. Lots of the others were being controlled by it and could not give their own news ideas, within Germany anyway. And by 1944 there were only 1,000 newspapers rather than the 4,700. So lots of control of ideas. The Nazis also released their own paper called Der Stürmer. This was posted up on public display boards and was encouraged to be read by the people. So now newspapers are a lot more heavily controlled. Films was another big area for control. So in the 1920s, as you remember from our Golden Age video, films had become amazing in Germany. It was the boom of the Golden Age. Films was part of that massive boom. So how are they going to control the messages in films? How could they use them for indoctrinating and brainwashing the people? So the solution was, of course, to make great films themselves around the ideas of Nazi messages. So Jeu de Suisse was to indoctrinate people to be anti-Semitic. Kruger was an interesting film. It was a film about the British mistreatment of South Africans during the Boer War to try and get the Germans to hate the British more in the build up to World War II. Because unfortunately, the people of Germany just didn't hate the British enough to want to fight them to the death necessarily. So films could therefore start to brainwash people and turn them to the ideas of the Nazis. Radio was becoming one of the key modern tools for news media. So radio was often too local though, lots of local radio stations, perhaps following the American example of being quite commercial as well. And not enough people had a radio. It wasn't like America where it's a big boom in the 1920s. So the solution was to provide cheap radios called the People's Receiver. And by 1939, 70% of people had a radio. And they developed a national radio station, the Reich Radio Company. And this was controlled by the Nazis. For instance, they'd have every maybe Sunday evening, they'd have a senior Nazi giving a speech. Everyone could sit around and listen. They also had loudspeakers in public areas where they could broadcast some of the Nazi news and highlights. So now they can share lots of positive news about Hitler's Germany, and obviously they can have censorship here. Like with the newspapers, they can control the news, not sharing the negative news, only talking about the positive news. Culture is probably a really good example to talk about in terms of propaganda, how they can develop a Nazi culture. So one thing to consider about culture was there were too many books and too much art that did not agree with the Nazis. We think about the art of the Golden Era. It wasn't traditional German art. It was a modern thing they didn't agree with. So they had to remove this and bring back a more traditional idea. So the solution was Jews and other undesirable races were banned from art and their work was destroyed. Book burning was common of unwanted books. So a really good example to think about here is the anti-war book All Quiet on the Western Front. Okay, it's a famous book. It's also been a famous film recently. Easy one to remember. This was a common one to be burnt. Pro-war books developed, like Goebbels' book Michael, so that they are now promoting the Nazi values of the perfect race and militarism. Festivals are another important part of culture. The problem was, of course, that there wasn't enough Nazified ideas in culture, but also Nazi militaristic parades were really popular. So how could they expand this and make this more part of everyday life? So the solution was to make more rallies and celebrations. So Hitler's birthday in April would be a national celebration. The anniversary of the Munich Putsch in November would be a national celebration. The Munich Putsch parade was a candlelit parade through the night time, remembering the people who died. It was a very sombre event with lots of national coverage. So it was a chance for parades to show militarism, power and organisation. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt this video, but I want to give you a bit of detail on my revision guides and my videos, because if you find this really useful, I have loads more out there. Have a look at my playlists in my YouTube channel, but also have a look at my revision guides. They're packed full of notes and, importantly, lots of videos like this, and also tutoring videos talking through how to answer questions in detail and to a really high standard. Okay, well, I hope you found this useful, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and look out for more of my videos. I've got loads of videos on lots of different topics. Have a look through them. Okay, hope to see you soon. Bye bye for now.